We are going to come to God's Word now. And our passage this morning has not one, but two female characters. It's the tale of two daughters. One who's an adult, she's suffered pain and distress for years and years. The other is a girl, a young girl, on the brink of womanhood, who falls ill, who dies, and then is dramatically raised to life by Jesus. Now, we don't know the names of either of these girls, women, and yet this story is so important that it's found in all three Gospels. So what we're going to do now is read Mark's version together. If you've got your Bibles, would you turn with me to Mark chapter 5, and we're going to read from verse 21 to 43. When Jesus had again crossed over by boat to the other side of the lake, a large crowd gathered around him while he was by the lake. Then one of the synagogue leaders named Jairus came, and when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet. He pleaded earnestly with him, "My little daughter is dying. Please come and put your hands on her so that she will be healed and live." So Jesus went with him. A large crowd followed and pressed around him. And a woman was there who'd been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had. Yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak, because she thought, "If I just touch his clothes, I will be healed." Immediately her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. At once, Jesus realized that power had gone out from him. He turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" "You see the people crowding against you," his disciples answered, "and yet you ask, 'Who touched me?'" But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet, trembling with fear, and told him the whole truth. "Daughter," he said to her, "daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering." While Jesus was still speaking, some people came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue leader. "Your daughter is dead," they said. "Why bother the teacher anymore?" Overhearing what they said, Jesus told him, "Don't be afraid, just believe." He didn't let anyone follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they came to the home of the synagogue leader, Jesus saw a commotion with people crying and wailing loudly. He went in and said to them, "Why all this commotion and wailing?" "The child is not dead, but asleep." But they laughed at him. After he had put them all out, he took the child's father and mother and the disciples who were with him and went in where the child was. He took her by the hand and he said to her, "Talitha cum," which means, "Little girl, I say to you, get up." Immediately the girl stood up and began to walk around. She was 12 years old. At this they were completely astonished. He gave strict orders not to let anyone know about this and told them to give her something to eat. I wonder what it would have been like to be in the crowd that day as this story unfolded. It must have been quite a thing to see Jairus, this important man, this synagogue leader, a significant figure in the community, falling at Jesus' feet in desperation, pleading with him to come and help his little daughter. Helpless. His position, his status, his money, all unable to make a difference now when it really mattered. And I guess there would have been a sense of urgency and anticipation in the crowd as they followed along with Jesus to Jairus' house. But then I also imagine there must have been confusion and a bit of frustration, perhaps even a bit of condescension and derision, particularly from Jairus, when Jesus doesn't continue all the way to his house, but he stops. And he looks around and he asks, "Who touched me?" And then he takes the time to draw out from that crowd of people someone of apparent worthlessness, someone faceless, someone nameless. Because whilst Jairus, at the beginning of the story, approached Jesus directly, publicly, the woman that reached out and touched him from the crowd did so in anonymity, secretly, wanting to remain hidden, cowering under the shadow of her shame. And yet, what we know from this story is that Jairus and this woman were both equally desperate for Jesus' help in that moment. And so I think the first thing that we notice from this story, or these two stories perhaps, is that it is one that is rooted in the rawness of human experience. It's one that is covered by a shadow of desperation and shame. Right from the start, Jesus encounters desperation, first in the person of Jairus, then in the woman. He encounters the whole range of different expectations of other people. Everyone there wanted something from him. But there was also the confusion, the misunderstanding, the frustration that Jesus encounters in this episode. But he also comes face to face with humiliation in the person of the woman. Later, he comes face to face with derision from the mourners, who look at him with scorn and ask why he's there too late. And yet, at every point in our story, Jesus meets whatever the emotion is, whatever the rawness of experience. He meets it and he transforms it. He responds to it. He turns desperation into celebration as he heals. He turns misunderstanding and confusion into understanding as he reveals what is hidden. He replaces the agenda of others with his priorities as he pauses along the journey. And he turns shame and humiliation of that woman into restoration as he heals her and affirms her. And he turns the derision into amazement as he raises that daughter from the dead. And so what we see is that every point, Jesus is fully present to what is going on around him. He's willing to engage in the reality of the experience of those around us. He's willing to engage in the mess and the brokenness of life. And we see that Jesus is there for those who are desperate, for those who feel humiliated. He's even there for those who would deride others. And so this story is deeply personal. And I think that because of that, it should resonate with each one of us here. Because after all, who amongst us hasn't at some point felt a little bit helpless, a little bit unnoticed, a little bit humiliated? So if that is your experience, then there's something in this story for you that says Jesus knows, Jesus notices. You are not on your own. Just as Jesus was present there for them, he is present here for us in whatever we are going through. But I want us to pause and to notice the woman hidden in the body of the crowd, who attempts to come to Jesus in secret, not wanting anyone to know that she's there. She is a woman who has been defined and confined, I think, by her suffering. For 12 years, she has suffered the indignity, the discomfort, and the shame of continual bleeding. Now, this would be bad enough for us now, but we have ways to mitigate it. But then it would have been so much worse. Because under Old Testament law, a woman who was bleeding was considered to be unclean. And as unclean, she was barred from worship in the temple. She wasn't allowed to enter into the fullness of community life because anyone touching her while she was unclean would themselves become unclean too. So there's a great likelihood that she was shunned. She was a woman on the edges of her own community, prevented from entering into all that was going on around her. But we learn more about her in this story. We also learn that she was a woman who had been exploited and traumatized over many years. Doctors had taken all her money. They'd subjected her to a whole range of pre-modern medical techniques that had done nothing to help her. In fact, they'd made her worse. Physically, emotionally, and spiritually damaged. She shouldn't really even have been there in that crowd, potentially, because touching her would have caused others problems. This was a woman, traumatized by her circumstances, desperate, ashamed, and probably outcast from her community. And yet, she was one who believed that if she could just get close enough to Jesus, if she could just touch his cloak, that would be enough. She would be healed. And so despite the differences in their social standing, their personal circumstances, their gender, there's something completely unifying about Jairus and this woman. Both have reached the end of their own resources. They've done everything they can in their own strength to solve their problems, and yet neither are able to do that for themselves. Both need Jesus. And both have faith that Jesus alone can help them. But the reality is that they only go to Jesus at a point of desperation. And I wonder if there's a bit of a challenge for us in that. Are we sometimes a bit like that too? They went to Jesus for what he could give them, not because necessarily of who he was. Do we sometimes continue with our lives completely independently, and yet when crisis hits or when challenge comes, then we're happy to go to Jesus, then we're happy to pray, but the rest of the time we're sufficient on our own? This is far less than God intends. This is far less than he is worthy of. The woman demonstrates in her faith a desire to get to Jesus, and so her faith is real. But I think her faith is also, at the beginning at least, just that little bit limited. It's imperfect. But that's good news for us, because all of us start in a place of imperfect, limited faith. And however imperfect her faith is, it is rewarded. She touches his cloak, and power goes out from Jesus, and immediately her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. And here again, this is where the encouragement is, isn't it? God's power doesn't depend on how much or how little faith we have. God's power, his grace, and his mercy are a reflection of his capacity, of his character, of his nature. They spring from him as the God of love. And so they're never proportional to our faith. They're always an expression of his unending, all-sufficient love. Physical healing is what this woman wanted. She longed for, and I guess she was overjoyed when she felt that change in her body. But I think that probably after that, she was expecting to disappear away, slip into the crowd in just the same way that she had come. What she wasn't expecting was for Jesus to pause, to stop everyone in their tracks, to draw attention to her in a way that perhaps she wasn't ready for. But healing for Jesus isn't limited to physical healing. He didn't want to just fix her presenting problems and then let her go away. He wanted something fuller, something greater for her. He wanted not just to heal her, but to restore her. The damage that she had suffered because of her illness was far greater than simply blood loss or tiredness. Stopping her bleeding wasn't going to restore her to wholeness. And so that is why Jesus stops. That is why Jesus asked, "Who touched me?" And that's why Jesus makes space in the middle of this other dramatic story that's going on, in the midst of the urgency of getting to Jairus' daughter, and he makes space and time for her. And Mark's description of what happens next, I think, is telling. Mark tells us, "Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet, trembling with fear, and told him the whole truth." You see, physically she might have been healed, but for her, the shame and the fear remained. Despite being the recipient of a miracle, miraculous healing power, she falls before Jesus, not in worship and awe, as you might expect, but in fear and trembling still. And in some ways, it's not surprising, is it? Jesus is standing there in the middle of the crowd, drawing attention to her when she wanted to remain anonymous. But he's also standing there next to Jairus, the synagogue leader, who may have been the very man that excluded her from temple worship. And if not that, at least he represented those people who had been the cause of her exclusion. A man of power, calling out, or alongside a man calling out a woman of weakness. And I wonder how Jairus felt in this moment. I imagine that he was used to being the priority. He wanted Jesus to come straight to his house. I imagine that he was not terribly impressed by this pause as a father or as a ruler. I wonder whether he expected Jesus to rebuke this woman, to tell her to go away, that he'd got busy, better things to do. I wonder if he expected Jesus to withdraw from the woman. After all, here was Jesus, a rabbi, who had been touched by an unclean woman, in the presence, no less, of a Pharisee. Whatever Jairus' expectation or his indignation, Jesus doesn't respond in any of those ways. What he does is he draws this woman out. He brings her in from the periphery, in from the sidelines. And he makes time to notice to her. And he makes time to listen to what she has to say. Not just the overall summary of things, but she says the whole truth. And in doing so, Jesus makes time to get to the real heart of the issue. Perhaps amidst the drama of the physical healing, we're tempted to gloss over this part of the story. And yet these details are important because Jesus is modeling for us here the real importance of seeing and noticing and valuing the story of each and every one of us. We were reminded earlier on that we are all made in the image of God. So therefore, each one of us is valuable. Each one of us has worth. And yet so many people do not feel as if they have worth. So many people are ostracized, ignored, neglected. I don't think that if we are treating people as Jesus did, we can do that. We have a responsibility to notice, to hear the story, to take care. Because the stories of all are important to Jesus, just as the story of this woman was important to Jesus. And so, rather than the rejection and the hurt and the experiences that she has suffered before, she tells her story to Jesus in front of all of those who have rejected and reviled and oppressed and excluded and exploited her. And Jesus hears. And he looks at her, not with disgust, not with revulsion, but kindly. He responds not with condemnation, but with affirmation, and he gives to her his peace. He gives to her freedom. He gives to her a new status. Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering. Far from being tarnished by her impurity, Jesus gives her his purity. And the word translated there as healing can also mean salvation. And it reminds me a bit of the story of the 10 lepers. Do you remember that? 10 were healed by Jesus. All 10 go away, 9 are never heard of again. And yet one comes back, only one, to say thank you. And despite what our Sunday school teachers may have told us, I don't think the point of that story being recorded was to remind us how important it is to say thank you. I think we were supposed to notice the difference between the 9 and the 1. The 9 were healed physically, but the 10th got much more than that. He came back. He came back to Jesus, and Jesus said to him, just as he says to this woman, your faith has saved you. And so what we see here is that the fullness of healing that is possible with Jesus is so much more than physical. It is spiritual. The 10th leper returned. He found salvation. He entered into the more of the relationship with Jesus that is possible. And here for our woman, hidden in the crowd, focused on her body and her suffering, she comes face to face with Jesus. And in that interaction, in that encounter with Jesus, she gets so much more. Jesus shifts the focus from herself to him and becomes the answer not just to her physical need, but to her personal and spiritual need as well. She receives so much more than she expected. And this is what I just love about this story. Here's someone on the margins, suffering, isolated, excluded, exploited, someone who's a bit of an inconvenience, really, irritation to others who think they are the priority. And in the moment, Jesus notices. Jesus takes time, and Jesus is interested in more than just a quick fix. He's in the business of restoration and transformation. He gives this woman, cowering in the crowd, the gift of his presence. He gives her his power, but also his dignity. He gives her dignity and acceptance. He makes her a priority, and he shows her that she has worth. And so in this story, we see that she, the hidden, the ostracized, is just as important as the synagogue leader and his daughter. And there's a bit of a challenge, I think, in this for us too. Jesus was on his way to do something that was important, that was necessary, that got done in the end, actually. And he could have been forgiven for carrying on and just ignoring this woman. After all, she's been ill for 12 years. You know, what would another couple of hours do? He could have come back later and healed her then, had a conversation with her then about it, but he doesn't. He doesn't lose sight of what he's going to do, but he also makes space and remains attentive to what is going on around him as he's journeying through that day. And I wonder, how often are we so preoccupied with our agendas, with what we've got to do, that we fail to be attentive to who Jesus is bringing alongside us? How often have you paused in the supermarket queue to notice those people around you? How often, when you're serving at church doing coffee, have you thought that maybe there's a conversation that you could be having that's a little bit more important than just tea or coffee? How often do we ask God as we go into our days what he is already doing, where he is already at work, and where he wants us to join in with him? Jesus models something different here. He models an attentiveness and a presence. He models being responsive to those around him. That's what we should be, I think. And I think that we have a particular responsibility as Christians to notice those who would otherwise be overlooked. To take the time to get to know the people around us so that we hear their story and we give them the same level of worth and dignity and love and acceptance that Jesus gives to this woman here. So what we learn from this woman is that Jesus cares, that he notices, and that he has the power not just to heal and to restore, but to transform. And that's what it's all about, the transformation that is possible through encounter, relationship with Jesus. This story depicts a transformation in standing before God. At the start, the woman comes in trembling and fear, but by the end, she leaves with peace and healing. Elsewhere, the Bible calls that salvation and shalom, a restored relationship horizontally with those around us because she was now able to engage with her community again, but also a restored relationship with God. When she tells her story, Jesus responds to her not with condemnation or rejection, but with healing and restoration. And in the same way, we can be confident that when we come to Jesus with the mess and the whole truth of who we are, knowing that he already knows us fully anyway, his response will be similar. It won't be one of judgment. It will be one of mercy. And it will be accompanied by the offer of the extension of his healing and restoration. And in the story of these two daughters, what we see is the gospel in a nutshell, isn't it? It's all about Jesus' ability to transform everything, even death. This story faces up to the fact that sometimes suffering and pain and poverty and ostracism and humiliation feel like a kind of living death. This woman's life was no kind of life, was it? And so we see here not just the resurrection of a girl from actual death, but we also see the transformation of a living death in the restoration of this unclean woman who is made healthy, whole and pure, and given back her life to live. Jesus has come to bring life and hope to things that we think are dead and beyond all hope. And Jesus makes this story his story. Like the woman, he becomes the outcast, made cursed by the crucifixion. Like the girl, he rises from the dead. Their story echoes his. So in this tale of two daughters, we find the simple truth that we can try everything else that the world has to offer, but ultimately everything else will fail us. Christ alone is able to bring wholeness and healing, and he does that to all of us because each one of us is valuable to him. Christ alone offers fullness of life and fullness of life for now and fullness of life for eternity. So let's pause and pray. Lord Jesus, help us not to come to you for what you can give us, but come to you because of all that you are. We thank you that you know us completely, that you love us completely, and that you want us to experience the fullness of life that you have offered us. Lord, help us to be attentive to your work in our lives, but your activity in the world around us. May we see with your eyes the people that others overlook. May we be people that bring your life, your hope, your wholeness, your restoration, your transformation to the world around us. Amen.